Welcome back, wanderer. Tonight, the swamp is quieter than usual. Not empty, no, it's never empty, but still. The kind of stillness that settles over a place after something has almost happened, but hasn't yet. Like a breath held between two choices. You're here just in time. The CareCats are gathered. They've sat with their shadows, danced with their doubts, screamed, cried, even napped dramatically. And now it's time to decide whether to open the gates or to reinforce the walls. Don't worry, you're not here to fix anything. You're here to feel your way through it. Softly, gently, like moss under a paw. So wrap yourself in a blanket, or a dread blanket if you prefer. Sip your mug of possibly tea, and settle in as the final chapter of this swampy tale begins. Let it in. That time we voted to feel things and somehow we didn't die. The dawn didn't rise, it hesitated. Like a guest arriving too early to a breakdown. Hovering just below the horizon, the light seemed to peek around the corners of clouds. Unsure whether it was invited or about to witness something unglitterably raw. Even the sun, that notoriously dramatic gas ball, dimmed its usual flare to a soft shimmer. It wasn't ready to cast light on what was about to unfold. The swamp didn't sing. The frogs, normally prone to midnight opera and existential bass solos, had declared a unanimous croak embargo. No ribbits, no burbles, just reverent, wide-eyed waiting. Even the moss, the endlessly sighing, ever-opinionated carpet of softness, fell silent. But of course not out of fear, out of respect. Something was happening, or about to, or maybe it just needed to. At the edge of the circle, the echo beast hovered, not above like a threat, nor below like a burden, but somehow it was inside everything. It bulged through the fog, it shimmered in puddles, it echoed faintly in the spaces between each heartbeat and held breath. It didn't roar, it didn't plea, it didn't even sparkle. It simply was. The kind of was that fills a room without needing to speak. Like sadness with exceptional posture. Or like guilt that no longer felt a need to introduce itself with "I'm sorry." 13 CareCats stood or crouched, or even curled protectively around half-drunk emotional support lattes, in a sacred messy ring of dried moon tears and bioluminescent mushrooms that hummed in minor keys. They weren't warriors, nor heroes. They were simply ready enough. At the center stood the consent box, so ominously sparkly it managed to be both hilarious and terrifying. It glittered in awkward shades of truth. Twinkleton had assembled it from recycled vision boards, splinters from broken affirmations, and at least 3 discontinued coping mechanisms from back in 2008. The lid cracked softly when you looked at it too hard. Morty Kitten stood beside it, still, moss-flecked, the emotional equivalent of an antique diary that had learned to breathe. He just stood there, didn't even clear his throat. He just looked at the others and spoke like a sentence that had taken decades to finish. We vote, let it in, or seal it. No judgment, no glitter bribes. The statement hung in the air like fog with opinions. Glitterhoof let out a squeak, the kind that sounded like his inner sparkle had hiccuped. Sespresso hissed in solidarity, her tail curling into a perfect punctuation mark of emotional exasperation. No one laughed, not really. They just breathed, in the way you do when something real is coming. And for once, you're not planning to run. Morty Kitten closed his eyes, took in the swamp, the stillness, the ache, and with a breath that sounded like it had been passed down through centuries of journaling cats, he whispered, one by one. And the swamp listened gently. The votes, the swamp didn't speak, but it watched and it listened. The fog held its breath like mist suspended on the edge of becoming a memory. At the center of the moss circle stood the consent box, humming with choices yet to be made. Its glimmers reflected the dirty and exhausted faces, none of the same, yet all cracked in familiar places. Morty Kitten was the first to step forward. No drama, no glitter, just moss trailing from his tail and something ancient in his eyes. Let it in, he said quietly. I already froze once, I won't do it again. He dropped his vote into the box, the lid sighed, and then he stepped back, not taller, but freer. Next came Sasburn. Her steps scorched the moss just slightly. Her flames flickered, not with rage, but with reluctant courage. Let it in. I'd rather burn alive than live cold forever. She didn't wait for approval. Just nodded once, then stood in silence. Catatonic rose slowly. No grand movement or speech. He blinked once, and the swamp blinked back. Let it in. No elaboration, just existential clarity. Then came Doompaws, still wrapped in his despair blanket. He paused, shook slightly, eyes heavy, tail still. Seal it. I'm not ready. Some feelings still cut too deep. He folded the vote with care, like it might bite. When he placed it into the box, the swamp didn't judge. It simply hummed, softer. Melon Kitty stepped next, her whiskers twitching, her shoulders draped in emotional rain clouds. "Let it in," she whispered. "Sadness doesn't scare me, silence does." She touched the box like an old diary and then let go. She touched the box like an old diary and then let go. Anxiety followed. Her paws trembled, but her scrolls were neatly laminated. She scuffled forward, breathing in counts of 4. "Let it in," she exhaled, as she slid 17 backup plans into the box, just in case. Gremlin practically stomped in. No hesitations or filters, no, that's not Gremlin. "Let it in," she bellowed. The swamp startled. 3 frogs fainted, and she smiled, victorious. Sulk Shadow emerged like fog from the edge of things. He moved like a whisper dressed in regret. "Let it in," he murmured, tired of hiding from what's already inside. He didn't stay to see anyone's face, just nodded to the box and disappeared back into stillness. Then Gloomper, soft as sleep, a poet at the edge of feeling, carrying invisible scars like lullabies. "Let it in," she said. "Beauty lives where sorrow breathes." Her vote floated in, light as dusk. Stillmore's paws didn't make a sound. She approached like a storm that had already passed, not gone, but changed. "Let it in. I was buried once. Now I want to bloom." She held the box a moment longer than the others, like she was planting something that would take years to grow. Crankleclaw was next. His paw hovered, his breath caught, the anxiety twitched behind his eyes. "Seal it," he said, barely audible. "What if it gets worse?" The moss curled around his paws in answer, not to restrain, but to soothe. Sespresso walked up last before Sparklehoof. Her mug clinked against her armor. She looked tired, caffeinated, and emotionally completely done. "Let it in," she said. "Time to uncup." She dropped her vote like it was hot, which it was. Then stepped aside, and then Sparklehoof. Tail low, eyes brighter than usual, but not from sparkle, from presence. He hesitated, not from fear, but from sincerity. "Let it in. I was waiting for someone to ask how I really was." And then he did something no one expected. He smiled. Not big or proud, just a real smile. The votes are settled. Final tally, 12-2. There were no cheers, no confetti, No dramatic background vocals from the frogs, just a deep, swamp-soaked quiet. A moment suspended in truth, and a box full of choices glowing softly, not because it won, but because they choose. The last step, but it wasn't over, not yet. Not until the mist gave back what it had taken. From the fog's velvet folds came a sound, soft at first, like a memory walking in heels. Then, there she was, Queen Velvet. Her presence didn't announce itself, it seeped in, the way shame does. Her heels clicked like heartbreak on marble. Her veil trailed behind her, catching on the air, like the final thread of a dream you swore you'd forgotten. She stood at the edge of the circle, not quite in, not quite out. Her mask cracked, a spiderweb of truth breaking through years of polished detachment. It flickered under the moonlight, like even the lies had grown tired. She tilted her head, voice fraying like a ribbon being pulled too tight. You think this will save you? She didn't shout or sneer. She ached. Stillmore stepped forward. No drama, no hesitation. Just the quiet strength of someone who had spent years clawing herself out of silence. Her paws pressed into the moss like roots replanting themselves. She looked at Velvet, past the mask and the performance, and spoke with the calm of someone who had died emotionally more times than she could count, and still decided to keep returning anyway. It already did, she said. That broke something. Not loudly or violently, but like a teacup, set down too gently, but still cracking, because the wear was already there. Velvet's mask shimmered again and then trembled. A tear slipped through the seam. One, then another one, and then all of them. For the first time in all of her royal choreography, she cried. Not pretty, not planned or poetic, but real. And then, barely audible, barely even hers, she said, "Let it in." The fog wrapped around her like an old friend finally forgiven, and the swamp exhaled. The unsealing. There was no explosion, nor blinding revelation, no choir of frogs singing catharsis in four-part harmonies, just a soft, mutual breath. The guide you take when something shifts, when something joins you without demanding to be fixed. The echo beast dissolved into the mist. Not vanished, but somehow joined. Its shape is scattered, its sound soaked into memory, and one by one the CareCats felt it. The first time they really ached, their sharpest silence, but also their original voice. It wasn't replaced nor solved, but they witnessed it. The swamp took a long, loud, dramatic exhale. The frogs croaked quietly, and dawn finally rose. The swamp became a sanctuary. No fireworks, no divine revelations, just moss and mist and a tiny shifting gravity. The kind you only notice when the burden you forgot all of a sudden feels a little lighter. Velvet wept, not for show, but the kind of crying that rewires your bones. Her mascara ran like midnight ink on diary pages never meant to be read. Then, as if her heart forgot its lines and improvised healing, she laughed. A raw, cracked laugh. The kind that hurts and heals in the same breath. And then she cried again, because that's how grief works. Stillmorn didn't speak much. She just handed Velvet a chipped mug that said, "I felt things, and all I got was this mug and growth." It was warm. And for once, so was Velvet's silence. Sparklehoof sat beneath a sleepy willow. His cracked horn, once hidden, now glittered proudly beneath layers of stardust and swamp pollen. He didn't ask for permission to do it. He didn't even explain himself why he did it. He just painted. No apology followed. Doomboss didn't say a word. He just sat beside Gremlin, whose yelling had shifted from rage to release. She screamed into his dread blanket like it was a sacred ritual. He didn't flinch, he didn't fix. He simply stayed. And that was the bravest thing he'd done all week. Gloompur, backlit by a soft mushroom glow, wrote a poem so heartbreakingly true that a precipice nearby sobbed uncontrollably for hours, and then immediately published a zine titled The Vulnerability Manifesto. Catatonic blinked, and high above, through the mist-draped canopy, the stars blinked back, and that was enough. Mordenkainen lay on his back, moss in his fur, staring up at the ceiling of the world, patchy with clouds, scratched by branches, and full of ancient hush. He let out a long breath and murmured, "It still sucks sometimes." Anxiety nodded. Her 17th contingency plan shredded under her paw. She didn't reach for another. Instead, she said, "But now we don't suck alone." The swamp didn't change overnight. The trauma didn't vanish. The past didn't rewrite itself. But something had shifted. The moss felt safer. The fog less judgmental. Even the stupid frogs seemed gentler with their croaks, like they too had been holding something in. The swamp didn't become perfect. It became sacred. Because now every root knew it was allowed to shake. Every vine was allowed to grow in crooked directions. And every CareCat knew they were no longer surviving alone. They were home. They were home in a sanctuary made of scars, glitter, mud, and permission. Permission to feel, to fall apart again, and to begin again. if you're still listening, then maybe, just maybe, you needed this. Maybe you felt a fog settle in your bones, or maybe you even met your own echo. That thing inside that doesn't scream but waits quietly until you're ready. And tonight you were. You were ready to let something in, even if it was just a sliver of feeling, or a breath, or even just a crack of light. And now you don't have to do anything else anymore. Let the frogs take the night shift. Let the moss tuck you in. And let the swamp, weird, flawed, and absolutely sacred, hold you until the morning. Close your eyes, CareCat. You did enough. You felt enough. You are enough. Sleep well.